Oof, well, that was a short break, but hey, we're back. I hope you had a chance to grab a snack, maybe get a little more to drink. I don't know. Am I the only one who's hearing the final countdown playing in their head? Because that's where we're at. We're in the final hour here of an action-packed spring one. Don't worry, all the videos will be available here in probably the next week or two. Looking forward to that. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you. As I mentioned earlier, that I've been a happy T-Mobile customer now for many years, so I'm delighted to have them here in my track, getting us a conversation about messaging. So we're going to go ahead and throw it over to Al and Raj to talk to us about messaging. Take it away, folks.
Fantastic. Very glad that you are happy with our T-Mobile service. In fact, first of all, I'm Al Garay, and I'm with the T-Mobile Enterprise Technology and Solutions team. That's a mouthful, but it's ETS for short. And with me is Raj Palani, and he is the architect and technical lead for the solution that we're about to share. So that is the who we are, but let's talk more about why we are on this journey. So that is a very simple, and like what you pointed out, taking care of our customers is one of our T-Mobile's guiding principles. In fact, this year we made it our number one value is to love our customers. So customers are happy, we're happy. And how well we communicate, getting customer messaging right reflects on our brand, and it really directly impacts customer loyalty. So just to put it in perspective, in the scope of what we manage within our platform, we handle 2 to 3 million messages a day. That's a lot of SMSs, emails to customers. So it really becomes imperative that we do it right. So let's talk about what that is. What does it mean? What are some of the keys to having the right messaging? First of all, is making sure we're sending the right message to the right customer. Delivering the message at the right time and the right content or the right context. It needs to be personalized appropriately for the right situation. So that's an awful lot of rights. So I just want to go ahead and just hand over to Raj so he can cover more of the how. Raj?
Thank you, Al, for that wonderful introduction on the why and the what. Let's talk a little bit about how we did it. And before we go into how the current solution works, let's start with how messaging was done, the legacy approach. A lot of people here might be familiar with this kind of picture, a service bus in the middle, the systems publishing into that bus, and there's a middleware stack. If you've guessed it right, it's basically your middleware SOA architecture. So in this type of architecture, what we had were like individual systems like this is a system for managing accounts, system for managing billing, system for managing orders, and so on and so on. And all of these systems are publishing hundreds of events among them. And all of them are going to different topics, messages, and so on. And we have to write a subscriber code for each unique event, which will then take those messages and parse each data model, because each of them are their own data model. You have to parse each one of them and identify what is that scenario and create the corresponding message which we have to communicate to our customer, whether it is email, SMS, or postal mail, or any more scenarios as well. Now, if you see the scope of this, basically we're talking about a code with a lot of rules which has to parse a unique data model each time and call the right target each time. And if, let's say, I have to introduce a new target tomorrow, I want to introduce push notification experiences for our customer, the impact to the code, both upstream and downstream, is like we have to go through each and every code, introduce that, and then finally bind all of that into the specific call that we've introduced. Again, it's painstaking. We have to, developers have to spend a lot of time from the beginning, like analysis, design, development, test, and code. That usually takes like probably 6 months before you can even get something in production. So this, even though this picture looks like all straightforward, you see lines from top to bottom, everything looks clean, but in essence, it looks something like this for us, because messages were going from left to right, right to left, all directions. There's no way to figure out where it is going. And if there's an issue in production, for us to go and figure out, okay, where is that issue happening? which system is responsible, who's owning the system. It took us weeks sometimes to just figure out that problem. And this solution was built upon uh, a lot of proprietary products, which had their own advantages at the time, and but they became a long pole in the tent by this time, because these are not cloud native platforms. So which means every time we did something, we had to push a change, we had to bring down the system, deploy something, test if the deployment worked, then bring it up. So we had an explicit downtime. And also these systems needed a physical hardware. So which means there is an operational team just maintaining hardware for that scenario. And all of this was adding up to the problem that we started with. Now, now we have seen all the problems with the legacy solution as stack, and a lot of people are familiar with this kind of problem. Now let's take that first problem that we talked about. How do we consume hundreds of events? Because that's not a trivial problem to solve, because you have to talk about, okay, do I have to tell my upstream to say, okay, you know what? I don't want to consume 100 different data models. You send me in a unique, in a centralized data model format. That's easy to do, but that means you're just pushing the problem up. Somebody has to bear the brunt of that coding cost and maintaining that code. And every time something changes, you need to request everybody to change that. So we thought, okay, let's think a little different. So we thought like a little bit like the greatest hero, Mark Watney. Okay, let's science the shit out of this. And he said, okay, let's think different. Why do you have to think code? Let's think code as a config. Let's see, okay, can I actually not parse hundreds of different data models? I don't have to do that. Let's break that first. And out of that came a loosely coupled design. Basically said, okay, let's not parse 100 different data models. We'll just consume whatever they're publishing. That's okay. We'll deconstruct that into certain objects. And to deconstruct that, we needed a powerful dynamic evaluation happening in runtime. And this kind of evaluation was only possible with an open source project called JSON-ATOM. The project allowed us to basically embed rules on top of whatever data model was getting published to extract data what we needed and convert them into a flat map object. So now I solved that first part of the problem. Basically, I said, okay, I took data, which is so many different data models, and I said, okay, I now have a data model which is consistent within my domain or within my systems. So I can easily share this data across my microservices in a consistent fashion. And all of this is done without writing hundreds of lines of code. I just have one import statement somewhere saying import this JSON library and then evaluate this rule when this particular event comes. And I can add hundreds of different evaluation rules like that to extract data. It's not a problem because all of those are rules, not code. Those are all stored outside the code, which means your deployment time is not broken. So you don't have to keep deploying every time something changed. So this solved the first part of the problem. So now at this point, I have a data model. I convert it into a standardized model, which I can then consume. But still, for sending a notification, we need to implement rules on top of this, because on this data model, I need to write my rule saying, okay, when an order gets created, I have to send this notification, or when a bill gets generated, I have to send a different notification. So each of these are different rules, and each of these rules have to be managed in some form, which allowed us some control over it, because we are talking thousands of rules in a sense, right? So let's go how we solve that. So first thing we did, okay, let's not even try to convert and put this into a normalized tables, because that's going to make it even more crazier, right? So we said, okay, whatever format we created, which is JSON, we'll store it in that format. So we picked MongoDB, we stored data in that. And we said, okay, we'll build REST APIs on top of that to manage all the rules. So all these rules are managed through REST APIs, so we can perform cloud operations on top of them. But we didn't stop there. We said, okay, you know what, this is good, but this is not good enough. Let's build an UI on top. So we found a project at the time, luckily for us, they had a project where you can dashboard things quickly in React. So we use that project to build our UI. And that allowed us to build something which allows to manage like over 500 configurations today, each of them containing 10 or 10 to 20 different rules, in total like thousands of rules. And if you see the screenshot below there, it's just an example of what we have. So you can basically allow anybody within T-Mobile to go and search for these and see what rules are present today, who will get a notification, and when they will get a notification. And all of these are just available for anybody to search, analyze, and work on. And this UI is also embedded with authentication and authorization, because we didn't want anybody to access it. We wanted certain people who had access to certain pages perform an action. So Okta integration is enabled. So even that is there. So with this, we have a solution which had a whole product, which is our messaging ecosystem, where we listen to events happening, or in some cases, if we are exposing to external clients, we expose them via REST APIs. So they can call us internally. Everything gets processed through the rules engine, and the flat map objects are created, gets pushed to the microservices, and the microservices process them and send those messages to our customers. If you see this picture, you can see at the far right, from the earlier picture to this, you see a lot of open source and cloud native solutions. Obviously, Spring, we are here, obviously, right? So Spring is there, Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry, and MongoDB. So this allowed us to do daytime deployments, zero impacts to our customers. And another important aspect of this solution is it allows us to scale up and scale down things as on demand, because notification is not a one-time scale done thing, right? Because based on events happening in the system, you want to scale things up or scale things down, so that way your notifications can be sent on time to customers without any impact to them. Now, we talked so far about, okay, we got a development solution, we have a product, we have to run the product somewhere, and we have to run it fine without any interruptions, 24/7 availability. And for that, we basically said, okay, we have to build operations which can meet what we built for the product. So we said, okay, we'll automate every step of the operations in it. So right from our deployments, where there are automated deployments to automated rollbacks, automated regression, where we test over 5,000 test cases each day. So all of that adds up to where we don't even have bugs in QA anymore. So when we deploy code in QA, it is basically bug-free. And as I mentioned earlier, notification is a unique problem, because we are talking about a situation where you have to scale up demand or scale down as needed. And that means you have to be very careful about your performance. And we added a performance testing in our pipeline. So every time a code gets deployed, it gets evaluated. And and if you need any on-demand, we run an on-demand stress testing as well to ensure that whatever we build is not breaking down in performance. And the next two parts is very important and something close to me. I believe that any system that you build will break when you don't want it to break, probably, right? We've all built systems. It's broken at some point or the other. There's no way around it. So the only way you can safeguard yourself is building self-heal systems and enough observability monitoring into your solution. So at T-Mobile, what we did is we built resiliency in all layers. Our infrastructure layer has built-in resiliencies, and our systems are built with enough resiliency where any triggers or any tripping on those flows basically triggers an automated retry in our flow here. So anytime something breaks down, it basically triggers a retry, and so on and so on. So it keeps retrying until it is successful. and any critical messages are isolated. So that way, if let's say some non-critical flows are broken, it doesn't impact the critical time-sensitive messages. So in that case, let's say you have a one-time pin message versus a billing message. You want the one-time pin to come immediately to your device because you're trying to enter it within a time window. But your billing message probably can wait. So those isolations are already built in. In terms of observability or monitoring, we have alerts at different levels. So again, we thought about who are our customers. So again, the product mindset helped us here because we are thinking about who are our customers and what do they want. So they want to look at, okay, what is that business flow? And I want to know whether that flow works or not today. So we are able to create alerts on that. We are able to create system alerts so that from an ops perspective, the system fine. So we have all those alerts established, which is monitored by a 24/7 support team. So anytime something happens, which basically heals the system on its own, and even then, there's an alert which lets us know that this thing is happening. So I just want to take a quick minute here and I want to show something. So this entire solution for operations is only possible because this was built into the design that we saw at the beginning. Because you cannot build this kind of an operational solution post your design and development is done. This is something that you have to think ahead. So that's something of a culture change that we went through. And we said, okay, you know what? We've always been designing systems where we develop something, we give it to somebody else to operate on. But we said, okay, let's start do that. Let's go to the DevOps. What is DevOps? So let's say I design some solution. Let me think about how this is going to work in production right then and there. And that is how this whole solution is possible. And I also want to bring up another point, just to emphasize that this whole journey that we took is only possible with the support of our leadership as well. Because when we started this journey, we were in a physical world with monolithic applications, and then they supported us with the journey of, okay, let's do cloud native. Let's build applications which are more open source based, and that is how we were able to get to this point. So with that, I'm gonna hand over to Al, who's gonna talk about what are the benefits and what is the next steps.
All right. Thank you so much, Raj. Beautifully stated. Really good job going over the how. And I totally agree. Our leadership is extremely happy when there's no noise. Anything that proves that shows that we are a technology company, provide solutions, and yet there's no impact to our frontline, no impact to our customers. We are very proud of the fact that we can do all of these innovations and have 100% availability, zero production defects. I mean, that's mind-blowing. But to talk about some of the benefits, and you keep hearing this over and over and over again, but being customer focused is such an important factor. And we even started to talk more about customer journeys. And so it really aligns with our company objective to try to create these customer journeys that enable us to better the whole customer experience by doing messaging right. And so let's talk about some additional benefits. Time to market. We know our marketing teams are going to come up with additional offers to help us continue to provide more and more opportunities to take care of the marketplace. And so now we're able to reduce the time to market to one sprint, basically 2 weeks, right? Whereas before it would have taken about five sprints, which is 10 weeks. So that's a huge reduction. And all of that is because now we don't have code changes. We have configuration changes. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but security, it's vital. It's very important to us, and we want to make enhancements. And so as we continue to move towards a centralized platform, having a central messaging library, those are things that are going to enable us to implement more secure APIs, encrypt the data at rest instead of just through, enforce proper domain names in emails to help prevent phishing attacks. And now let's talk about some of the things that are dear to a lot of our leadership as well, which is how can we become more efficient? in terms of costs, in terms of operational costs. So if you look at the work that used to be done by multiple of our partner teams, it used to take 6 to 10 teams, sprint teams. And now all of that work scope is done by one very efficient team. So if you project that over a 2-year time, we guesstimate that it's over $2 million savings right there, just purely on contract labor alone. Now we talked about, and actually, if we want to talk more about our partnership, because this could not have happened without the close partnership that we have with our consulting vendors that we use. And they know who we are, and I wish I could talk more about them right now, but I can answer some of those questions in a Q&A session. I'd be glad to. We mentioned about the infrastructure improvements, we made simplifications, we're far more resilient just by being able to migrate more to the cloud and running Kubernetes. So those are some of the things. But again, we're very, very proud of the fact that we can do all of these and still keep 100% availability. So let's go on to the next, which is talking about where do we go from here and what's looking ahead. Because, we like to use the mountain, which, it's kind of a popular thing, and I love climbing anyways and hiking, but we must continue to evolve. We can't stop because there's just a lot of efforts out there. If we don't solve it, then somebody else is going to come up with a solution, right? So the first thing we need to do is take care of our partners, our stakeholders, to provide self-service capabilities. So in order for us to continue to expand and grow, we need to enable them to create messaging themselves, leveraging the framework, the platform that we've created. Now, we also need to think about personalization. We are building this repository that we can start to do some analysis, right? We can use some of those best artificial intelligence, machine learning, I got that right, machine learning tools to help analyze patterns, identify, unique experiences. So that way we can better tailor the message to best fit what the customer wants, right? Privacy, just like security, privacy is very important because, we want to allow the customers to control the type of messaging, maybe giving some settings and stuff so that way it just takes care of their wants there for privacy. Now, these are just some of the things that we thought of, but we know there's just a lot more opportunities. And so we just have to be very flexible to keep evolving as the continued opportunities arise. Now, it all sounds very peachy, everything that we're talking about, but we did face a number of hurdles, right? A number of challenges. And so number one is that the improvements that we did just in messaging were not funded on their own right. They were really part of other efforts that we had in modernizing our infrastructure, in migrating from legacy applications to more of microservices to Kubernetes. So that was always a challenge for us. It just forced us to be very scrappy. It didn't hinder us because we continue to make these enhancements to our platform. We did have to overcome resistance as we worked with our partners to say, hey, let us do the messaging for you. And that took a little bit of persuasion, but it wasn't that difficult once they learned what our capabilities were. So we also face distraction because there are always new teams that come along or other teams who don't know us, who are looking for other solutions, or they have their own messaging solution. So we know that this whole scope of influence for messaging is very broad and that we need to collaborate, we need to educate, and we need to evangelize our capabilities. So just trying to summarize even more here, basically moving to this product mindset just really changed, and that was really the key for us to making us really highly efficient, productive technology solutions DevOps team. It put us in the right path to all of these innovations that we've done. We have a really good foundation, a really solid foundation, but yet it's pliable so we can adapt. So we're just better fit overall of what's coming ahead. So I think with that, that's pretty much what we have for our session. I want to thank you for allowing Raj and I to share our experiences and invite you to join us in the Q&A session. We'll be there and glad to answer any of your questions.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for that presentation. And again, if you have questions, you want to keep the discussion rolling, follow us on over into the Q&A chat, and we will go from there. But you know what? It's time for our final break. So get up, stretch, grab something to drink, something to eat, and then we will come back with a little bit of testing talk with Billy.